The monsters were sniffing around since they could smell meat, but they couldn't tell where it was coming from. Our hero just wanted to escape the forest as quickly as possible and find a human village, but he was clueless on which way to go. Also, the forest was still full of man-eating monsters. However, he is stronger now, and with the blade he got as a prize from the Blue Moon's meat cutter last episode, it was good for stabbing. But blade alone is not enough to get its former owner the ugly title of meat cutter. A god is praying for the soul of the outsider. Our hero thinks he told his god last time he wouldn't die here. Just because he's in another world with fantasy-like activities doesn't mean he has to follow their rules. A god is watching you with bored eyes. He cuts up vines to make rope and got a decent-sized rock. Does that mean he has to fight with a sword or use magic? He makes a makeshift sheath for his knife with some of the vines. Holding a bola made with the rock and vine rope in his hand, asks his god if he knows what centrifugal force is, to which the hooded figure has a puzzled expression. As they hear the sound of the bola, the monsters got confused. As they stare in the direction of the sound, they see the boy swinging the bola over his head. Our hero is now going to show these fantasy man-eating monsters what the power of science, well, more like physics, can do. This was more tiring than our hero expected, given that he still lacked physical strength, and if used too much, he might lose his footing. However, every time his outsider blessing kicked in, his legs would stop shaking and his breath stabilizes. With a laugh, he starts to get the hang of using his outsider's blessing. He no longer has to pay attention to minor wounds and fatigue now. With the realization, as long as he avoids death, the blessing will take care of the rest. So all he has to do is fight hard, without getting killed. As he keeps swinging his bola, and knocking the monsters out one by one. The other monsters nearby thinks as long as they stay away using distance attacks and prolong the fight, he will eventually get tired. As our hero gets hit by rocks, he starts to stagger. The monsters, thinking that it's mealtime, rushes forward for the finishing blow. Unfortunately for them, this was a trap set by our hero. With a devious grin, Hansu knocks them both out at close range. A god's evaluation of the outsider has elevated just a bit. Our hero calls his god stingy. As one of the monsters starts to wake, our hero warns it not to move if it doesn't want more pain. Standing over the monster, with the bola in hand and with a menacing look, asks where the humans live. Even knowing that it might be a pointless question, since the monster could just lie, he had no one else to ask. In response, the monster just states it's a meat that speaks. Then excitedly points in a direction, and states that they live in that direction. He asks his next question, what kind of species are they, to which the monster responds, the meat is stupid. After another threat of torture, the monster finally told him they are Knoll. Then asked to be freed since it has answered all his questions. To which our hero smiled innocently and said, "Alright, thanks for the information." In the next moment, cracks its skull with the bola, saying take care. While he did promise that he wouldn't hurt him if he answered honestly, but he never mentioned anything about sparing him. A god informs the outsider of many suspicions and the existence of Knoll. A Knoll is a half-man, half-monster who appears frequently in fantasy games. They are typically described as resembling hyenas. He still wondered why he was still at the same level after killing so many monsters. Meanwhile, at the temple, the prince was letting everyone know that the full-scale training will begin tomorrow. The prince will be teaching swordsmanship, while magic will be taught by the princess, and the heroes are free to choose. The overachiever asked if they can choose both at the same time. The prince replied of course, but warned it comes with difficulties, and if it gets too hard, they can quit in the middle. Another asked if they can skip both. The prince replied if you don't need lessons from the greatest swordsman and magician, that's their choice. The arrogant one asked if they can leave the temple during their free time. Prince answered affirmative. A great god is showing a lot of interest. At night, Ohanwu sat on his bed thinking that training was for extras. The main characters have their own way of doing things. All the extras can train all they want and keep shoveling around, while he, the protagonist of this fantasy world, will go and explore the ruins and labyrinths with his harem. The arrogant one laughed, with a grin on his face. The next morning, the prince announced to the gathered students to follow him if they wanted to pursue the path of knights. When a student asked about the magic teacher, the prince answered that the princess got drunk last night, but hopefully she will be here shortly, so they can wait for her here. The guys did not like the answer one bit. As Oh Han-woo checked his status window, he found another new blessing, the special F. You are the protagonist of the world's most special fate. Only you can see and feel this special blessing. The arrogant one grins, thinking he got his answer with this blessing. He looks at Choi Kong-min thinking he doesn't know anything and thinks he's the best, that overachiever, try your best. As Oh Han-woo walks away from the temple remarking, if useless punks like that work hard enough, they might just be able to rise to the position of a rival A of the protagonist. In the city of the Great Church, Prologina's Plaza, Han-woo remarks that the start of the fantasy adventure should start here, as he enters the Adventurers Guild. All the eyes of the seasoned veterans look in his direction, all starting at a newbie who didn't yet know his place in the world. As the pink-haired receptionist welcomes him and asks why has he come here, the arrogant hero replies, he is here to register and become an adventurer. The standard route chosen by the main protagonists of a fantasy genre, perfect for him who doesn't want to be bound. Someone remarks that this isn't a place for a greenhorn like him, and tells him to get lost. As Han-woo looks in the direction of the sound, he finds a redhead standing with her arms crossed, telling him to stop fooling around and go back home. She warns that she has seen many boys like him who become adventurers on a whim only to end up dying. With a blank stare, the only thing on Han-woo's mind is that this is the effect of the blessing, it's plot armor. The redhead asks, are you even listening? He stands there dazed without saying a word, thinking this nosy adventurer must be a princess or an aristocrat in disguise. This is a protagonist's plot device, the special blessing must surely be in effect. Our arrogant hero sure has an active imagination. He tells her that he's not going back, and if she is so worried, why not come with him instead? It's not a good habit to judge people simply by their looks, and from the way he sees it, she has gone through that same discrimination as well. With an expression of not bad on the redhead's face, she admits her loss. Han-woo turns around and thinks, yes, he is really special in this world. Without trying to put on airs, he drops the ball saying he cannot reveal it right now, but he is a chosen one. The redhead looked at him with skepticism, really? He thought if it was back on Earth, he wouldn't have been able to talk to such a pretty girl as this. While blushing, in this world he was a hero destined to save the world. A childish god laughs uncontrollably. The redhead asked what abilities the chosen ones have, to which Han-woo replies you'll be able to witness plot armor at work. Plot armor? Meanwhile back at the forest, Han-soo torments a gnoll, who is crawling on the ground and tells our hero that the human town is not west but far away. As Han-soo thanks him for the useful information, he knocks it out with his weapon. He remarks that gnolls are surprisingly truthful and it's easy to figure out when they lie. So the human town is west of here, but he has no idea exactly how far away it is. He has asked many gnolls, so it must be right. He struggled at first fighting with a gnoll, but things slowly changed over time. As he started to win more fights, the time needed to win grew shorter and shorter. In a span of one night, he changed from being a food source into a capable hunter. He remarked to himself, could this be a hidden talent? The hooded figure just stared at him silently. How could anything be so easy? While hunting he was dealt with many lethal blows, but with his outsider blessing, he was able to learn quickly and adapt. He remarks that the mental stability that came with the blessing is too great, being able to keep his composure even after taking a lethal blow. He wonders how far the town is, since he really wants to meet this world's inhabitants. A certain god expresses their disdain. Han-soo asks his god, do you want me to die? The god says it doesn't matter to them. Our hero comments, how cold since you're the one who gave me this blessing. As he walks in the forest, a gnoll hiding in the bushes nearby pounces on him, shouting neat. Han-soo notices this and pulls out his knife, and does a backward thrust into the gnoll's stomach, surprising it. He laments that these things never stop coming, as more gnolls rush at him from the woodworks. With knife in hand, he rushes towards the charging gnolls and makes quick work of killing them in a single blow. But he still finds it weird that his level still hasn't risen. He declares that he must have fought a lot of monsters that have a higher level than him, but what's the problem? A certain god is anxious. At the comment, our hero is puzzled. But before he could think anymore, words he couldn't understand was being spoken near him. He was thinking maybe the elves were nearby again, so he carefully looked around. Since they shot a fleeing human, maybe the non-hostile might have a different meaning than what he was thinking. As he peeked from behind a tree, he noticed a group of people standing in the middle of the forest. 2 male swordsmen and a female archer. They looked like adventurers by the look of their equipment. Then the archer noticed something and shot an arrow in his direction, landing on the tree he was standing behind. Since he couldn't understand what they were saying, he shouted to them, "Wait, I'm going to the town." At the same moment remarked, "Damn, they can't understand him." Thinking these are the first people he has seen, so decided to put away the knife for now. While the swordsman with a hand on his sword closely watches him, our hero drops to his knees and raises his hands in surrender. While he might not be able to communicate verbally, he can still try to communicate with actions instead. Using body language and a calm voice, he tries to avoid any conflict. While they stare at him, the female archer suddenly aims her crossbow in his directions. Our hero shouts, "Wait! This otherworlder doesn't bite. He is a nice otherworlder." Sometime later, Kang Han-soo is now traveling the forest alongside these strangers. While they still can't fully communicate, but it seems they have picked up a few words. While smiling, the female archer says his name, Kang Han-soo, along with other words that we can't translate. The other guys also chime in saying Kang Han-soo, and even more words that we can't translate. Our hero can only put on hapless expression and just play along with their comments, saying he understood without really understanding. This was all due to the fact he could tell them his name using body language, but of course he still couldn't understand what they said, since he wasn't the brightest when it came to foreign language comprehension. He thanked the god he met these friendly people, since at least they didn't shoot at him on first sight. And if they ran across any more monsters, he wouldn't have to fend for himself alone now. Even though he can't see their status windows, at least they are better geared and should be stronger than a level 1 like him. Something was bothering the hooded figure next to him. A certain god says you are not like a loner and nails it. Our hero just remarks okay, while continuing his relaxing walk. A certain god grumbles and says not to give half-assed answers. Han-soo just laughs and remarks the closer you get with a person, the more comfortable you get with what you say. A certain god says not to be so friendly. Our hero reflects that while he met with these people, yet the only intelligent being he can communicate with is this god. Even so, he was able to learn at least their names. The hairy old man is Gary and looks to be the party leader. He carries a giant sword and he has bulky muscles. How strong is this guy? A certain god snorts. But compared to me, he's just dust, since he is human after all. The young man's name is Cole. He is smaller than Gary and wields twin swords, but does he really use twin sword? Lastly, the party's long-range damage dealer, Misha, she uses a giant crossbow made of steel. She points to an area, and there is smoke coming up, but doesn't look to be a forest fire, so maybe a household chimney? He expresses, finally a place where people might live. A certain god points out that you are not acting like a loner. With a smile, he replies okay to the god. A certain god stares at the disrespectful loner in a dissatisfied manner. Han-soo tells the god that he is only acting friendly in order to escape from this forest. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a group of gnolls charge at them, shouting, "Meat! Give me your bones!" The three get ready for combat. While they draw their weapons, they shoot something at Kang Han-soo, but he doesn't pay much attention to it. As he draws his weapon for combat, the other two guys rush in front of him to meet the oncoming gnolls, leaving our hero bewildered. The two swordsmen charge into the pack, slashing away at the gnolls. Unfortunately, the gnolls are smart and warn each other about them, letting each other know that the big guy will tire out first, so wait for your chance to kill them. The monsters continue to talk, saying that they will get hurt if they get close, so wait until the meat gets tired. However, at this time, one of them gets hit by an arrow in the eye. Misha, while standing beside Han-soo, reloads her crossbow for another attack. The gnolls shout that the small meat in the back is dangerous, and is attacking them from far away. As the archer reloads her crossbow, an attack comes from behind her. While the swordsmen scream in panic, our hero blocks the attack with his knife. A certain god is feeling uncomfortable. Hansu tells his loner god that before you say that humans are nothing more than social animals, he wants him to understand that he really needs help from these people. The null, becoming infuriated by being blocked by a puny human, reaches out his claws to grab Hansu's head, but to his surprise our hero is able to dodge quickly at the last moment and skillfully counterattacks, stab him in the chin from below with his knife. A certain god says that it's none of their concern. The chanting of weak meat turns into weak meat strong as they face our hero. All the monsters are coming towards him since he is only at level 1, so he swiftly finishes off the rest of the monsters, surprising the rest of the party. While Hansu comments that it looks like everyone is safe, the expressions of the other party members are no longer friendly. As the archer aims the crossbow at his direction, our hero thinks, "You got to be kidding me, is this some kind of a sick joke?" With a smile, she fires the arrow right into the chest of our hero. As our hero falls, he curses, "Shit, this goddamn fantasy world." As calm Hansu is lying unconscious in front of them, they congratulate Misha for doing a good job even though the plan changed because of the null. Misha remarks it was better this way, since due to the rampaging nulls, they were able to find out how dangerous Hansu was. Their original plan was to sell him as a slave, but since he is now dead, they think it's kind of a waste. While they were discussing what to do, our hero regains his consciousness and firmly grips the knife in his hand. The big guy wanted to take the dagger, since he noticed the decoration on it was that of a royal fairy. Cole approached Hansu, remarking that our hero isn't releasing his grip on the knife until he dies. At this time, a warning from the archer tells him not to let his guard down since her shot didn't hit the heart, and he could still be alive. Cole, not taking any chances, raised his sword and strikes our lying hero. But just then, a status window of Kong Hansu shows up in front of Cole, surprising him. There are two conditions to see someone else's status window, either the target made in public or through special blessings. But another condition is that the target must be alive. Just as Cole realized this, Hansu stabs him through the neck, shocking the other two members. As our hero slowly gets up, with knife in hand and the arrow still sticking out of his chest, he confronts the other two members. Due to the exhaustion from the prior, the big guy could barely stand wielding his giant sword. Just then a warning comes from Misha, but it's too late as Hansu rushes in front of the big guy and slashes his throat. In surprise, another arrow hits our hero in the chest, but this time he just stands there and turns his head towards the archer. Gripped with fear, the archer tries to apologize, saying it was a mistake, but falls on deaf ears since all her words are gibberish. As he slowly walks towards her, she stumbles backwards and falls to the ground, crying her eyes out, begging for her life. Her pleads are cut short as he kills her off panel. As he takes the arrows out of his body, he remarks that those hurt a ton, and how dare she shoot those on humans. He takes the loot from their dead corpses, and is wearing the equipment of the archer as he walks back into the forest. A certain god reminds you of what happened when you tried to stop being a loner. Just FYI, the story uses outsider and loner as the same thing. Meanwhile, back at the temple, the drunken princess finally arrives to a group of waiting students. Making her apology, and telling them she will work harder to make up for being late. She goes on to explain that in the distant past, in the continent of Fantasia, there was no magic. Her lesson is rudely interrupted by other students sprouting their own theories and novel-based knowledge. Just then the class president tells them all to be quiet, that others can't focus due to them interrupting. At this, a boy next to her comments, "How would a nerd like her know anything about fantasies?" With a clap of her hands, the princess brings everyone's attention back to her. She goes on to say that talent is always the best. Since talent is important for magic, the explanation for the foundation of magic was necessary. At this, the students all became confused on what she was saying, thinking they missed something. So she reminded them again that magic is a talent-based study, and the factors that determine talent are innate bloodline and acquired academic ties. Lighting a fire in the palm of her hand and smiling away, the princess mentions, "Don't forget about them." Well, stay tuned to find out what happens in the next episode. Until next time.